Hello, this is Dissertation Defense Practice. I am Maggie Wilkes. I will be your speaker today. I will also be including several components within a dissertation that are important and essential pieces. So, we will be examining briefly this dissertation by Jane Weich Jonas entitled Good Intentions Are Not Enough: An Examination of Service Learning on a Public Charter High School Campus. Now, in order to understand her results, it's important that we take a peek at her purpose and a few other areas. Now, her purpose, was to kind of closely examine the different experiences that the students, in this case alumni, staff, and community partners had throughout the service learning program at Austin Charter Academy High School in California. Now, who and why? So her participants included 3 school administrators, 4 teachers, 9 alumni. Now they were new and older, so some had only graduated a couple years ago, the majority, and then some had graduated, 3 or more years ago. I think no more than 7 years prior. She also used community partners and then considered herself to be a participant as well. What she really wanted to look at was whether or not equity existed or not regarding how the students could access the community-based service learning projects within the service learning program. Now, her approach, to literature review was thematic in nature. She took a look at, kind of an overview of the origins of service learning itself, and then she also kind of looked at how it's grown, and then she discussed the various models of service learning that kind of existed within the school and other programs, and then how other schools really had taken service learning and kind of progressed and made changes and pushed the program kind of forward in a lot of ways. She also looked at historical evidence besides those other schools, other programs, so that she could take a look at what community-based service learning really looked like and its impacts on how students kind of work both in the classroom and out in society. And then, Weich Jonas also went a little bit further to talk about the benefits of community-based service learning on not only the students, but also the community partners. So when you look at how she did it, she did a lot of virtual interviews. This happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then she did virtual focus groups as well, but she didn't want that to be only 2 sides of her puzzle, so she also pulled in historical data from the school and looked at the origin of the program within the school and then how it kind of progressed to where it was when she was going through it. And then she also kept a journal throughout her study and considered herself to be the participant, thus making a qualitative case study also autoethnographic, because she was once an administrator at the school, so she considered herself a participant. Now, looking at her results, what she concluded based upon the interviews with everybody and then looking at her journal was that there really, these experiences were the same, they were not equitable for all involved. Staff really did not understand a lot of the components of the program, and therefore this made a lot of questions for the students and other participants. So they really didn't know what was going on. And then because of the lack of clarity, confusion kind of abounded within the program itself. So, students came to realize that if you knew a teacher that understood the program and its requirements and deadlines, then you were kind of golden and had that golden ticket that got you through the program. But because of the confusion, a lot of students did not know when the deadlines were, did not know when the opportunities were there, so they couldn't sign up in time before they were full. And they realized it's all who you know within this program. Now, some other results that kind of came about were that a lot of the times at which these community-based service learning opportunities, happened, and then the location of these opportunities were very prohibitive to a lot of the students. Over 80% of the students in this school were Latino, and then many, like those percentage, were all on free and reduced meals as well. So getting transportation, reliable transportation to these service learning opportunities just did not happen. It did not exist. And because they did not have the access to transportation and were not able to participate, they kind of lost out on, learning how to advocate for themselves, like they just didn't have the opportunity, and they didn't know the staff and well enough, and they didn't know how to self-advocate. The one other major issue that resulted in these interviews and focus groups was that a lot of these students did not live in a safe place, and so had this expectation that they needed to go out into the community and work and help was somewhat foreign, because where they lived was not considered a safe place to do it. But that's what they were being encouraged to do. Excuse me. So what it boiled down to was that they were the same program, and yet they were different. And so while, some people understood the benefits and the impact that this could have, others just kind of approached it as a to-do list. That's just one more thing I'm going to check off. And yet a lot of these students that were interviewed, these former students, I should say, they understood the impact of being able to get out of the building and go and work within the community. But because they didn't have access equitably, it didn't happen. And it's those types of experiences, experiential learning, that really provide those soft skills. Those are things that can't be taught. They have to be experienced, and these students just did not have the access to them. Now we're going to move into the components of a dissertation section, and we'll start with the introduction. And the introduction it's like setting a trap. It's dangling that carrot, and you want to make that introduction be so enticing that it's gonna draw that reader further in to the dissertation. They're gonna keep going because they just want to know more and they want to see more. And if you think about it, if you can dangle that carrot enough to get them to try the appetizer, hopefully they'll stay for the entree. And that's the power of that introduction. But that leads you into your research question if it's a qualitative study, or your hypothesis or hypotheses if it's quantitative, right? What does that researcher really want to know? That's something I'm going to look at. And, does that researcher have a structure that's going to help them get there? But also, what is that researcher going to magnify as they go throughout? There's that question that they come up with in a qualitative study like Weitz-Jonas. Is that question going to highlight something in particular? But not only do that research question has to talk about why it matters. And so it's kind of a lot of expectation, but this research question worded correctly will tell people why it's needed. Now, the methodology cannot be understated, and it's usually very unique to whatever the research design is. And in Weitz-Jonas's case, she used a case study, also autoethnographic, But when you use a case study or even in a quantitative study, you need the right tools and the right toolkit or the right playbook to get those results that you so desire, that are going to answer that research question. And so if you don't have the right instruments and you get other results, you're going to have to kind of go back. And so it's very important in the methodology that your tools and your instruments really get streamlined enough to give you the results that you desire. Now, your results, those are the things that are going to go in and find those commonalities and those themes and those trends that all exist within the data that you've gathered and that sit inside those results. And you got to kind of weave your way into these results so that you can provide graphics for people who are reading, because it's all about who's going to read it. And whether it's a table, a chart, a graph, something that's going to, give the everyday reader that easy understanding of what it is you're trying to say, because it's those results that are going to push for that change that, you're looking for. How to answer that question typically leads to change. You can't understate, the results. Now, the conclusion, this is that culminating chapter, Now, Robertson Hyatt, they were quick to point out in their book that you should never be too speedy in making a conclusion. You could fall off your treadmill. And so in this case, you really want to kind of marinate in the results for a while before you really are satisfied with the conclusions that you're making. Because once you make all those interconnections with the results, then you're going to basically take the whole dissertation and tie it up together so that everything makes sense. And when you do this, it's really kind of bringing everything together and going, oh, now I understand why this happened earlier in the dissertation, But at the same time, the conclusion has a little pressure on it because you get to make suggestions for what should come next. In the future, what do you see as being, the next step in the research? What do you see as the possibilities? So the conclusion really gets a powerful piece because it has to take everything else and make sense, right? But the conclusion cannot happen without the results, which can't happen without the methodology, which can't happen without the research question. And then that actually can't happen without the introduction where you state your purpose. And so one cannot happen without the other, but yet the conclusion is that nice kind of glue that ties it all together. Now, this presentation was brought to you by the following references. A lot of it had to do with copyright-free images. And then the book for the class that this is for, as well as, writing your introduction, and then the dissertation that was used itself. Thanks for watching.